I wanted to talk about two instances where the Russians took acts that some countries would frame as possible acts of war. That's not to say that the purpose of these acts were to declare war in the United States. That's not to say that the purpose of these actions were to eventually lead to somewhere that is a war in the United States, even years down the line. But that is to say that these are this is an act where they trample upon the sovereignty on the United States in such a way, considering the United States' own history, circa World War I and American ships being blown up, the death of American workers and civilians, leading to American military action, not only in that case, but also 100 years later, after 9/11, that these two cases could have been acts that not only the United States, but other countries could see as acts of sabotage, surely, but in a specific circumstance, especially if something goes wrong and there's fatalities involved, war making acts of war. And I wanted to talk about these two instances because I think sometimes when people talk about, either how much of a threat is Russia to the United States? Is Russia is still the United States enemy? Some polling indicates that a small percentage of Americans has increased the view that they might actually be able to be an ally due to probably rhetoric that has come from political leaders, probably an effective campaign from the Russian side. But I wanted to make clear that regardless of the current administration's view, that the Russian government still sees the United States as a power competitor, still sees it as a limiter on their ability to influence the European continent and the rest of their immediate neighborhood. And due to the responses that we've had post the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also due to the just general conflicts we've had in other places when it comes to other allies that they've supported, whether instead of Yanukovych, you could talk about Bashar al-Assad, you could talk about the Houthis, you could talk about I think better than the Houthis might be Khalifa Haftar or the Rapid Support Forces. In this case, the Russians were willing to take possibly lethal action against the United States as tensions continue to escalate post Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I think these instances should be discussed when we think about not only how this war should end, but the future of our relationship with the Russians and the future of our financial and security relationship with them. Whether or not we should be investing money into Russia, whether or not we should be making big contracts with the Russians, and whether or not we should be trusting them. In July of 2024, DHL parcels exploded in logistics centers in the United Kingdom, Poland, and Germany. Each of them was powerful enough to have brought down a cargo plane had they detonated on board. Security services would eventually trace the plot back to a group of Russian directed saboteurs who had a further 6 kilograms of explosive material in their possession. That was enough to give them the capability for, and I quote from the article, security officials told the Financial Times was the next stage of the plan to attack flights to the United States and cause more disruptions to the airline industry than any attack of terror since the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11. It was just one near miss incident in a coordinated and covert campaign of sabotage led by Moscow. If you're curious, specifically who, would be their military intelligence, GRU. Officials believe that has sown bewilderment across the continent and is steadily posing more of a risk to human lives. Now, this one is probably the most attention grabbing due to the national trauma Americans have in airline related terror events, airline related bombings and attacks post 9/11. But part of the reason why the Russians would want to do something like this is that the way that the United States has transferred aid over to Ukraine, has transferred resources over across the Atlantic to support our allies, has been through cargo planes, has been shipping all of these armored vehicles and crates of ammunition and artillery guns, M777 howitzers on the back of really big cargo planes, flying them across the Atlantic, setting them down, getting them out, putting them on the trains, and then shipping them over across the border. Now, the Russians have attempted to bomb train lines from Poland into Ukraine before. They tried to do it in 2022, trying to hire refugees to do it, but they've been more successful in recent attempts. So that's one node of the logistics transport that they tried to target. But that transatlantic node, considering not only the amount of aid America has provided up to this point, obviously now with Trump in office that has lessened, but the amount of weapon sales that the United States provides to the Europeans, there is an interest for the Russians to both attack on a basic level of trying to, try to strangle that supply chain, but also prove to themselves, prove practically, and prove to the United States that they can target our logistics nodes, that they can make it so, a war with them is not as simple as who has a bigger economy, or even who has more powerful industry, or who has more people to throw at the front line, or necessarily even who has the best like battlefield strategy. It can come down to, and Americans should know this better than anyone, whether or not you can get all the things you need to fight a battle from point A to point B. You can have all the men in the world, you can have all the passion in the world, but if you don't have any ammunition, you got no hope in the world. So this was just one example, though. Another way that you can target the United States, though, is through the mounting threat of cyber attacks. And there have been a release of some documents. This comes from the Central District of California. This is recently released over the last few months, but is finally getting some attention. Not much attention, but some attention. But I wanted to give it more attention because in these 38 pages, it highlights how the Russians have attempted to attack the United States through cyber attacks and sabotage attacks within continental America. Not within U.S. territory, which we should be just as upset about, not across the transatlantic, not our northern neighbor to the north, the Canadians, which they have also engaged in arson attacks against, but in the continental United States. Not only targeting industry that supports war directly, but also civilian industry, stuff that supports, a water system or system of getting clean filtered water to Americans. Listen to these testimonies because this made me very nervous when I read it. On in between August 28th to August 30th, 2024, defendant and co-conspirators compromised another public water system. Oh, by the way, if you're curious about what the type of people would look like who would go after America's public water systems for the Russians, here's what one of them looks like. See, they have a tail. They have a tail. Anyway, on in between August 28th to 30th, 2024, defendant and co-conspirators compromised another public water system in Texas, altering, by the way, mind you, it says another. I'm not reading all 38 pages, but you get the picture. Altering pump set points and shutting down the system, causing approximately 200,000 gallons of water to overflow. On September 18th, 2024, defendant and co-conspirators compromised a victim public water system in Indiana, evacuating all pumps and tampering with settings. So this is not targeting artillery production. This is not targeting weapons production in any manner. This is targeting America's public water system. This is targeting what we need not only to carry out our industry, carry out our daily lives, but to be able to support life, to be able to support hospitals, to be able to support basic public hygiene. 200,000 gallons of water overflowed. Multiple attacks on our public pump systems in Texas, in Indiana. This is in multiple states with a distance between each other of thousands of miles. So this isn't isolated. Oh, this is a Californian legal document. This is California. No, it's not in California. This is in Texas. Then it goes from Texas to Indiana. So this is a targeting in trans-state, multiple states across state lines, targeting of the public water system. On November 1st, 2024, defendant compromised the victim meat packing facility. Meat packing, again, not artillery shells, not munitions, meat packing. Compromised the victim's meat packing facility, shutting off refrigeration and spoiling more than 2,000 pounds of meat, and triggering an ammonia leak, requiring the facility to be evacuated for more than 4 hours, resulting in more than $5,000 in damages. Targeting the water system, targeting our food system, like meat packing. See, this is a little bit more ominous than even look, if they were to target our ammunition production, which this has happened before, this is something we've talked about before, the targeting of munition production in Czechia to North America, to our warehouses in Canada, warehouses in the United Kingdom, fields of vehicles in Germany. But to target our water and food system, this is to try to show either to the American government or to the Russian government themselves that they can carry it out, that they have other means at their disposal outside of just the direct fighting between our forces trying to hurt the United States, that they can bring war to the shores of the United States without a single Russian soldier sitting down, that they can bring destruction to the way we feed ourselves, destruction to the way we drink, the water we need to live, destruction, of course, to the way that we produce our munitions and stuff, destruction to our electrical grid. This is what they want to show both their planners and possibly us. Whether or not they meant to show it to us on purpose, I'm putting that up in the air. This could be operations they meant to conduct in secret just to show that they have these tools at their disposal, or it could have been meant to test them for themselves to improve their capability while also trying to act as a deterrent against the United States. Either way, these are direct attacks on our food. These are direct attacks on our water system. On October 31st, 2024, defendants compromised a victim's oil and gas company. So now we're talking about energy as well. In Colorado, Indiana, Texas, Colorado, all attacked and targeted by Russian sabotage operations. And the main thing I'm hearing out of Washington, D.C. right now, at the same point when the Russians have yet to give any concessions and have dragged their feet along the entire negotiation process, is exactly how much money we can make together. Not what they can do to stop another war, but how much money we can make together. This is what I'm hearing much more about. To see where Jared Kushner can profit, where Steve Witkoff can grin and make some money. Depleting on-site chemical supplies by increasing chemical injection rates into oil wells. See, this is not stuff where you need to necessarily get somebody on location and plant a bomb and explode it, like sabotage operations in World War I. This is a system where if hackers can get into your oil or gas company's infrastructure, or your water infrastructure, or your food infrastructure, then you can use the system itself to destroy itself, to start firing off things that shouldn't be fired off, to start flipping switches that should not be flipped, and to start doing as much damage as you can. Obviously, there is stuff you can do to try to harden your system to make it harder to hack. There is stuff you can do like safe, safe checks that you can put in place to try to limit the amount of damage done. But you know what this requires? Infrastructure investments. You know what this requires? Cybersecurity experts. You know what this requires? Research and development in cybersecurity. It requires an enormous effort. And it also requires us correctly identifying where the threats are emanating from. And this is coming from Moscow. Oh, and whoever this is.